The millionaire was forced to marry a blind girl, but her first touch saw his truth. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The millionaire was forced to marry a blind girl, but the moment she touched his face, everything changed. Rain hammered against the tall windows of Parker Group's boardroom as Ethan Parker stood in silence. The city below glowed in the wet reflection of streetlights, a storm swirling both outside and inside his mind. On the table before him lay an envelope, his late father's final will. He had read it 3 times, but the words still burned. If Ethan is not married by his 30th birthday, control of Parker Group will transfer to his uncle, Lucas Parker. His birthday was 7 days away. Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "So this is how you control me even from the grave, father?" he muttered. Across the table, his family lawyer cleared his throat. "There is one option, Mr. Parker. The will allows the marriage to be symbolic, provided it is legally registered." Ethan's sharp gaze lifted. "Symbolic?" The lawyer hesitated, sliding a thin folder toward him. "Lila Rowan. She is the daughter of your father's former business partner. She lost her sight 5 years ago in an accident. Her family's charity is struggling. She has agreed to the arrangement." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You want me to marry a blind girl for a piece of paper?" The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "For your legacy, sir." Lightning flashed across the glass walls, painting his face in silver light. Pride and resentment battled in his chest. Ethan Parker, billionaire, investor, self-made prodigy, reduced to signing his future through a contract marriage. He picked up the folder, flipping through Lila's file. A quiet smile in a photograph. Dark hair tied loosely, pale eyes that seemed to look far beyond the camera. Something in her stillness unsettled him. "Set it up," he said finally, his voice flat. "1 week. No emotions, no press. Just a legal ceremony." The lawyer nodded. "Understood, Mr. Parker." 2 days later, inside a small church on the Upper East Side, the scent of rain still lingered in the air. There were no guests, no photographers, only the echo of water dripping from the roof and the hum of the city beyond. Lila stood near the altar, fingers tracing the edge of her bouquet. She wore a simple white dress, the hem brushing against her shoes. Though she could not see the man approaching, she felt the tension ripple through the air. When Ethan's steps stopped beside her, she turned slightly toward the warmth of his presence. "You do not have to sound so angry, Mr. Parker," she said softly. "This is just business, right?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "You read the contract?" "I cannot read," she replied with a faint smile. "But I can listen." "Your lawyer explained everything." "Is not now." Her calmness irritated him and intrigued him all at once. The officiant cleared his throat, beginning the vows. Ethan repeated the words mechanically, but when it was her turn, Lila's voice wavered just once. "I, Lila Rowan, take you, Ethan Parker." She paused, then lifted her hand, searching. Ethan hesitated, then guided her fingers toward his face. Her touch was feather-light, her fingertips brushing the line of his jaw, the rough stubble he had not bothered to shave. "You look tired," she whispered, but not cruel. For the first time in years, Ethan's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not investors, not models, not the endless parade of women who only saw his wealth. The officiant's voice faded into the background. All Ethan could feel was that quiet, unguarded touch, like she could see something deeper than sight itself. When the final words were spoken, they exchanged rings, his a heavy platinum band, hers a simple silver circle. No kiss followed, only silence. As they stepped out of the church, the rain had stopped. The city smelled of wet asphalt and new beginnings. Lila turned her face toward the breeze and smiled. "It sounds like the sun is coming out." Ethan glanced at her, unsure why that simple line unsettled him so deeply. For the first time, he wondered if this contract might end up costing him something far more precious than his inheritance, his heart. The rain had finally cleared, leaving New York wrapped in the pale gold of late afternoon. Ethan Parker walked beside his new wife, the echo of their footsteps soft against the marble floor of his penthouse. Every wall gleamed, Every surface reflected wealth, yet the silence between them was heavier than the city skyline outside. "This place is bigger than a hotel," Lila said quietly, stopping near the window. Her hand brushed the glass, feeling its coolness. "I can almost hear the city breathing." Ethan loosened his tie, pretending not to watch her. "If you need anything, the staff will help. My assistant will bring your schedule for the public events next week." "I see." She smiled faintly at her own words, then shook her head. I understand." Her calmness unsettled him. He had expected questions, complaints, anything, but not this quiet grace. Dinner was served in silence. Lila sat across from him, her posture straight, her fingers carefully finding the edge of her plate. She ate slowly, precisely. Ethan kept glancing up, studying her. Finally she spoke. "You do not have to be uncomfortable, Mr. Parker. I know why we are here. I do not expect you to pretend." "You seem very sure of yourself," he replied, his tone dry. "I have lived long enough in the dark to recognize tension when it walks into a room," she said softly. "Yours is louder than the thunder outside." For a moment he almost smiled. After dinner, Lila excused herself, following the sound of the housekeeper's voice toward the guest wing. When her footsteps faded, Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the untouched glass of wine in front of him. He had agreed to this arrangement out of necessity, nothing more. Yet something about her, her poise, her quiet courage had begun to disturb the tidy walls he had built around his life. That night, he stood by the window of his study, watching the city lights blink far below. The reflection staring back at him in the glass looked cold, almost unfamiliar. Somewhere in the next room, Lila's soft voice drifted through the door as she spoke to someone on the phone. "It is all right, Mom," she whispered. "The agreement is legal. I will be fine for a while. At least the shelter will stay open." Ethan froze. "Shelter? What shelter?" He turned away, unsure why her words stayed with him long after the call ended. The next morning, sunlight filled the penthouse. Lila sat at the long breakfast table, listening to the faint clatter of dishes. The chef asked what she wanted. She only requested black coffee. When Ethan walked in, dressed for the office, she tilted her head toward the sound of his footsteps. "Good morning, Mr. Parker." He paused, surprised by the warmth in her tone. "You can call me Ethan. We are married, remember?" "Only on paper," she said gently, and he could not argue. Before he left, she reached out instinctively, her hand brushing his sleeve. "Be careful today," she said. He looked down at her hand, resting against his arm. "Why?" "I do not know," she admitted, her expression calm but her voice sincere. "You sound like someone walking into a storm." For a reason he could not name, Ethan hesitated before walking away. The elevator doors closed and her words echoed in his mind all the way to the office. He had expected this marriage to be a cage. Instead, it was beginning to feel like a mirror, one that showed him everything he had tried so hard to hide. That evening, Ethan returned home later than usual. The city outside was alive with horns and neon lights, yet the penthouse was quiet. He found Lila in the small music room, sitting beside the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys, not pressing, only tracing their smooth surface as if reading a secret. "You play?" he asked from the doorway. "Not really," she said with a soft laugh. "But I like to listen. Each note feels like a color to me. This having militas John reason, in at all abstome." He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "What color am I then?" Lila tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Gray, sharp, controlled. But sometimes, when you forget to guard yourself, there is blue underneath." Ethan was not sure why that made him quiet. He walked to the side table and set down a folder, the sound crisp in the still air. "These are the events we have to attend this month. The first one is the Parker Foundation Gala. You will need to accompany me." "I understand," she said. "I can have the staff prepare me." "There are a few rules," Ethan continued. "The media will be there. We act united, but nothing more. No personal questions, no touching, unless necessary. It will be easier that way." Her lips curved gently. "You like rules, do you not?" "They keep chaos away," he replied. "Maybe," she whispered, "but they also keep people away." He did not answer. Instead, he walked out, but her words followed him down the hall like a melody he could not unhear. The next morning, a team of stylists arrived. Ethan's assistant guided them, transforming the living room into a small fashion studio. Lila stood patiently as they adjusted her dress, brushed her hair, and explained the layout of the gala. Though she could not see herself in the mirror, her calm dignity filled the room. When Ethan came downstairs, he stopped without meaning to. She stood there in a long navy gown, simple yet elegant, the color echoing her earlier words blue underneath. She turned toward him, sensing his pause. "Do I look all right?" He hesitated. "You look perfect." Her smile deepened slightly. "Then maybe tonight, you can try to look less gray." He almost laughed. That night, the ballroom of the Grand Marlowe Hotel glittered with chandeliers and camera flashes. The Parker name drew every reporter in the city. As Ethan and Lila entered, conversation rippled across the room. Some whispered, others stared. Lila felt the weight of their eyes even without seeing them. Ethan guided her carefully, his hand steady at her back. "Stay close," he murmured. "I can manage," she replied, her voice steady. "You forget I live in darkness every day. A few flashing lights will not blind me." At the dinner table, one of the journalists leaned forward, her tone sharp. "Mrs. Parker, what made you fall in love with your husband?" Ethan froze, ready to interrupt. But Lila spoke first, her voice gentle yet clear. "I do not fall in love with what I cannot see," she said. "But I can hear honesty. And sometimes, I think I can feel it." The table went silent. Cameras clicked, flashes sparked. Ethan's gaze met hers, though she could not see it. For the first time, he felt exposed not to the press, but to her quiet truth. When the event ended, they stepped outside into the cool night air. The wind carried the faint hum of traffic and laughter from the street below. "You handled that well," Ethan said finally. "I was just honest," she replied. "You told me not to touch unless necessary, remember?" She turned her face toward him, her voice soft. "Sometimes, words can touch deeper than hands." He looked at her for a long moment, unsure what to say. For the first time, Ethan Parker, the man who planned everything, felt like he was standing somewhere he could not control. And it frightened him more than losing any fortune ever could. The following morning, sunlight spilled across the marble floors of the penthouse. Soft but bright. Ethan sat at the breakfast table with his laptop open, scanning through the news headlines. Every major outlet carried the same photograph, Lila standing beside him at the gala, serene and graceful, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The caption beneath read, "The blind wife who silenced a room." For the first time in years, the public was not talking about his company's profits, but about her, about them. He closed the laptop, a faint smile threatening the edge of his composure. When he looked up, Lila was already seated across from him, a cup of tea in her hands. "I heard the morning news," she said quietly. "Apparently, I made a good impression." "You did," Ethan replied. "Too good. The board wants to meet you now." Her brows lifted slightly. "Do they think I can see their numbers better than you can?" He almost laughed. "They think you made me look human." She tilted her head at the sound of his voice, as if measuring the truth behind his words. "Maybe you always were. You just forgot how to show it." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt warmer than the sunlight outside. That afternoon, Ethan returned to his office. His assistant handed him a stack of documents, contracts, reports, the endless rhythm of business. Yet his mind kept drifting back to the way Lila had faced the cameras without fear. When the workday ended, he did something unusual. He stopped at a small flower shop on Fifth Avenue. The clerk looked startled to see him. "Something special?" she asked. "Nothing extravagant," he said. "Something that smells like rain." He did not know why he said it. That evening, when he entered the penthouse, he found Lila sitting near the open balcony door, her face turned toward the night breeze. He placed the bouquet beside her. "What is this?" she asked, brushing her fingers along the petals. "Lilies," he said. "They reminded me of you." "Because I am blind?" "Because they grow quietly," he said, "and they last longer than most flowers." Her smile was small but genuine. "That is almost poetic, Mr. Parker." "You can call me Ethan," he said, "at least when it is just us." Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of their lives began to change. They attended events together, dined at home, and shared long stretches of silence that felt oddly comfortable. One night, a storm rolled across the city. Thunder rattled the windows. The power flickered, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Lila did not flinch. She was already familiar with that world. But Ethan cursed softly, fumbling for his phone. Relax, she said, standing. Come here. He stopped moving as she reached out, her hand brushing against his arm, then his face. Now you know how I live, she whispered. When you cannot see, you listen closer. You breathe slower. You learn that not all darkness is cruel. Her fingertips lingered against his jaw, tracing the rough edge of his beard. You feel tense again, she murmured. I am fine, he said, though his pulse betrayed him. No, she whispered. You are afraid of what you feel. Outside, lightning flashed through the glass, illuminating her face in pale silver light. For the first time, Ethan saw not weakness but strength, a quiet certainty that disarmed him completely. He reached for her hand but stopped halfway, unsure if he should cross that invisible line their contract had drawn. Her lips curved in a knowing smile. You do not have to touch me, she said softly. You already did when you brought the flowers. The lights returned, flooding the room with gold. Yet, in that moment, Ethan realized something simple and terrifying. For the first time since their wedding, he no longer saw Lila as an obligation. He saw her as the only person who made him feel seen. A week later, the Parker Foundation hosted a charity conference downtown. The event hall buzzed with chatter, the kind that smelled of money and curiosity. Ethan Parker had attended hundreds of gatherings like this, but tonight felt different. Tonight, Lila would speak for the first time in public. He had offered to cancel her appearance after seeing how nervous she seemed that morning, but she refused. You once said people only see what they want, she reminded him. Maybe it is time they listen instead. Now, standing backstage, Ethan adjusted his tie for the fifth time. Through the curtain, he could hear her voice, a steady, gentle rhythm that silenced the crowd. When I lost my sight, she said, people told me I would live half a life. But blindness did not take away my vision. It only changed where I look. I have learned that leadership is not about control or sight. It is about trust. The applause was thunderous. Ethan froze, caught between pride and something softer, deeper. When she stepped off stage, he was waiting. You were incredible, he said quietly. She smiled, turning her face toward him. Was I convincing enough for your investors? For me, he said, his voice lower than before. You do not have to convince anyone. For a heartbeat, their silence felt like gravity. But not everyone shared his admiration. As the evening wound down, Lucas Parker, Ethan's uncle, approached with his usual polished smile. Beautiful speech, he said smoothly. You have a gift, Mrs. Parker. You almost made me forget that your marriage is just a business deal. Ethan's jaw tightened. Watch your words, Lucas. Oh, come on, nephew. Everyone knows, Lucas whispered, leaning closer. A blind girl for a legal signature? The press will love it once they find the contract. Lila's head turned slightly, her expression calm. You sound very sure of what you think you know, Mr. Parker. Lucas smirked. I always am. Then he walked away, leaving a trail of poison in his wake. That night, back at the penthouse, Ethan paced near the window. Lila sat quietly on the couch, hands folded. He is going to dig, Ethan said. If the contract leaks, it could destroy everything. I told you from the beginning, she said softly. Truth always finds its way. I cannot lose the company, he said. It is my life. And what about yours, Ethan? She asked. When do you start living it? Her voice was calm, but the words cut sharper than anger. He turned toward her, seeing something in her expression that stilled him completely faith, not in him as a millionaire, but as a man. The following day, Lila received a message from the board's secretary. A meeting was scheduled for Friday, an unscheduled vote regarding Ethan's position as CEO. Lucas had wasted no time. Ethan tried to act unbothered, but Lila sensed the tension in every word he did not say. That evening he sat at the piano, tapping a single key over and over. Do you regret it? She asked from behind him. Regret what? Marrying me. He looked up slowly. No, he said. I regret that I did not meet you before everything became about control. She walked closer, her fingers brushing the edge of the piano. Then let me help you fight for what matters. Ethan frowned. How? By doing what I do best, she said with a small smile. Listening. There is good self in Megat in rapid chern. He stared at her, realizing that the woman who could not see might be the only one who understood where the real danger was coming from. Outside, the city lights flickered like sparks on the horizon, and Ethan felt the storm building again, this time not in the sky, but within the walls of his own empire. Friday arrived with gray clouds rolling over the skyline. The Parker Group boardroom was already filled when Ethan stepped in, the air thick with whispers and tension. At the far end of the table sat Lucas Parker, calm and confident, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Ethan took his seat, his jaw tight. "Let us get this over with," he said. Lucas stood and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I called this emergency session because I believe our leadership has been compromised. Mr. Parker's recent marriage was not a union of love but a transaction, a legal maneuver to maintain control of this company. I have proof." He snapped his fingers, and a screen behind him lit up with documents, copies of the marriage contract Ethan had signed weeks earlier. Gasps rippled through the boardroom. Ethan's eyes hardened. "You stole those files." "I uncovered the truth," Lucas replied smoothly, "and the board deserves to know." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, to everyone's surprise, the glass doors opened and Lila entered. She walked slowly but confidently, guided only by the sound of her cane against the polished floor. "Mrs. Parker," one of the directors said awkwardly, "this is a private meeting." "I know," she said gently, "but since my name is on that document, I believe I am part of this conversation." Ethan rose halfway, startled. "Lila, you should not be here." "I need to be," she said, "for both of us." She faced the room, her voice steady. "Yes, our marriage began as a contract." Ethan did not hide that. "But everything else you see, his work, his dedication, his compassion, is real. You are all looking for a scandal when what you should be looking at is the man who has saved this company more than once. The aim is self-forgetting, with I live, soons in the grade," Lucas scoffed. "Touching speech. But your words do not change the facts." "No," she said calmly, "but they might change the truth you keep twisting." Ethan looked at her, speechless. For the first time, he realized that the woman he had married for convenience was now standing in front of a room full of powerful men, defending him without hesitation. After the meeting adjourned, Lucas stormed out, furious. The board had postponed their decision, unsettled by Lila's words. Ethan caught up with her near the elevator. "You did not have to do that," he said. "I know," she replied softly, "but I wanted to. Is it not a Dale's aunt?" He watched her press the elevator button, her expression calm but pale. "You are shaking," he said. She smiled faintly. "Do not worry. I only shake when I care too much." The doors opened, and for a long second, neither of them moved. Ethan finally said, "You keep doing things that make it impossible for me to stay distant." "Then stop trying," she whispered. That night, rain fell again. Lila sat near the window, listening to the storm. Ethan joined her, setting down 2 cups of tea. "You were brave today," he said. "I just told the truth," she replied. He looked out at the dark city. "I am not used to anyone standing beside me like that. As less again to the batter. You do not have to be alone anymore," she said. He turned toward her, the dim light catching the softness in her face. "I do not deserve you." "No one has to deserve love, Ethan," she said. "They just have to recognize it when it arrives." The thunder rolled in the distance, and for the first time, Ethan reached out, covering her hand with his. She did not pull away. Her fingers tightened around his gently, steady and sure. In that quiet moment, the noise of the storm faded, and what remained was the unspoken truth they had both been avoiding. This marriage had started as a contract, but somewhere between duty and deceit, it had turned into something real. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines that sent a chill through the Parker household. Across every major business network, Lucas Parker's voice played on repeat. "My nephew's marriage is a fraud. A billionaire buying his way into inheritance. It is a disgrace to the Parker name." Ethan stood by the television, jaw clenched. He switched off the screen, but the echo of those words refused to leave. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls from investors, emails from reporters, demands for answers. When Lila entered the room, her expression was calm but concerned. "It has started, has it not?" He nodded grimly. "Lucas leaked the story. The board is panicking. The company's stock dropped 5% overnight." She stepped closer, resting a hand on the back of a chair. "What will you do?" "Fix it," he said. "The same way I fix everything. With proof, with logic." "But logic will not heal what gossip has already wounded," she said softly. "You have to show them who you are. not just what you built. He looked at her, tired and frustrated. You think that will make a difference? It will for the people who matter. By afternoon, the storm outside matched the chaos inside the building. Paparazzi crowded the entrance to Parker Group, shouting questions as Ethan arrived. Is your wife a paid actress? Are you stepping down? Was the marriage fake? He said nothing, pushing through the flashing lights. But as he entered the elevator, his reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a man cornered by his own success. Inside the boardroom, the directors sat in tense silence. Lucas was already there, smiling as though victory was guaranteed. We cannot risk more damage, one of the members said. If this continues, our investors will pull out. Lucas leaned forward. Then vote him out. For the sake of the company. Ethan opened his folder, voice steady. Before you decide, I have something to show you. He pressed play on a recording. Lila's voice filled the room, the speech she gave at the charity conference. Her words about leadership, trust, and vision echoed through the speakers. When the recording ended, the room stayed silent. That, Ethan said, is my wife, the woman you are calling a fraud. She has done more for this company's reputation in a month than any of you in a year. The chairman hesitated. But the contract, I signed that contract because of my father's will, Ethan interrupted. But what began as a requirement became something else. I will not apologize for falling in love with the person who reminded me why I started this company, to help people see potential where others only see profit. Lucas laughed. Beautiful speech, but too late. He turned to the board. You have all seen the headlines. You know what the public thinks. At that moment, the door opened. Lila stood there, escorted by Ethan's assistant. She walked forward, unhurried, her white cane tapping softly against the floor. Mr. Parker, she said calmly, you have spent your life talking about legacy. But legacy is not measured in how much you keep, it is measured in what you give. The room fell silent again. Even Lucas had no clever reply. That evening, back at the penthouse, Ethan sat beside her on the couch. The rain had returned, gentle this time. You should not have come to the office, he said. It was chaos. Is wine. I do not like sitting still when the people I care about are being lied about, she said simply. He looked at her, his voice low. You care about me? She smiled faintly. Do you really need me to answer that? He reached for her hand, holding it between both of his. I thought I could control this story, but I was wrong. Somewhere along the way, you became the only part of it that feels true. Her fingers tightened around his. Then stop fighting the truth, Ethan. Let it set you free. For the first time, he felt the weight of every lie, every deal, every wall he had built begin to crack. And beneath it all, something real and fragile was finally breathing hope. The next day, the storm reached its breaking point. News crews surrounded the Parker Group headquarters, their cameras ready to catch the company's collapse. Social media exploded with speculation. Half the city believed Ethan Parker was a fraud, the other half defended him as a man trapped by his father's cruel will. Inside the penthouse, Ethan stood by the window in a charcoal suit, eyes shadowed from another sleepless night. Lila entered quietly, hearing the faint rustle of papers in his hands. You are leaving to face them, are you not? She asked. I have no choice, he said. Lucas has turned every investor against me. If I stay silent, I lose everything. In its sizable gray matter bowl, she moved closer, her hand brushing the back of the couch for guidance. Then speak, but not as the CEO they expect. Speak as the man you have become. He looked at her for a long moment. And what man is that? The one who finally learned to be seen, she said softly. An hour later, the boardroom was packed. Reporters filled the corridor outside, microphones pressed against the glass doors. Lucas Parker sat at the end of the long table, his smirk confident, his victory seemingly within reach. Ethan entered without an entourage. His posture was calm, but his eyes held something different this time, clarity. Before any vote is made, he began, I want to address every person in this room. Lucas rolled his eyes. Another speech? Ethan ignored him. You all know the story. My father's will required me to marry before 30. I followed the rule, and I broke every other one to protect this company. But in doing so, I forgot what this company was built for. He looked at the directors, one by one. Parker Group was not founded to sell success, it was founded to create it. To give opportunity to people who were never given a chance. Lila reminded me of that. A murmur swept through the room. Ethan continued, steady and sure. Yes, our marriage began as a contract, but it became something more. I am not ashamed of that. I am grateful. Because in her, I saw everything this company was supposed to stand for: integrity, courage, and vision that does not depend on sight. Outside, the reporters strained to hear every word. Inside, silence filled the air like electricity. Lucas rose, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Touching, but words will not change the numbers, Ethan. The damage is done. Ethan turned to him, calm. You are right, words alone will not. Which is why I brought proof. He clicked the remote, and a projection filled the wall. Bank statements showing unauthorized transfers from Lucas's accounts to several shell companies. The board gasped. These, Ethan said, are the funds Lucas used to manipulate the stock and leak confidential documents. Every trace leads back to him. Lucas's face drained of color. You cannot prove. I already did, Ethan interrupted. The authorities are waiting downstairs. As if on cue, two federal agents entered the boardroom. Lucas Parker, you are under arrest for fraud and corporate sabotage. The room erupted in murmurs as Lucas was handcuffed and led away. Ethan stood still, the weight of months of tension finally lifting from his shoulders. When the chaos quieted, he spoke again, his voice softer now. I will rebuild what he tried to destroy, but not alone. This time, Parker Group will stand for every person who ever had to fight to be seen. The board members rose one by one, some clapping, others simply nodding in silent respect. That evening, as the city lights flickered on, Ethan returned home. Lila was waiting by the window, her hands folded in her lap. He stepped toward her quietly. It is over. Lucas has been arrested. The board stood with me. She smiled faintly. Then justice finally found its way. He nodded. Because of you. I only spoke what I felt, she said softly. The rest was always inside you. Ethan looked at her, the weight in his chest turning into something lighter. You once told me that not all darkness is cruel. You were right. It led me here to you. For the first time in years, Ethan Parker, once a man defined by power and pride, felt something he had never truly known before. Peace. A month later, the city had begun to forget the scandal and to remember the story. The headlines no longer called it the Parker contract marriage, but the Parker redemption. The company's stock recovered faster than anyone expected, and the public saw Ethan not as a fallen heir, but as a man who had chosen honesty over pride. One quiet afternoon, Ethan and Lila returned to the small church where their wedding had taken place. The last time they had stood there, rain had poured against the windows and silence had hung between them like a wall. Now, sunlight spilled through the stained glass, painting soft colors across the pews. Ethan held a small velvet box in his hands. Do you remember what I said that day? He asked. Lila smiled. You said, no emotions, no press, just a legal ceremony. He laughed softly. And I was wrong about every word. She tilted her head, her tone teasing. Is this your attempt at rewriting history? No, he said. It is my attempt at starting over. He opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring, no diamonds, no signatures, no conditions. Just light catching the curve of metal. I had a jeweler craft it from the metal of the first contract pen we used, he said quietly. Something that once meant duty now means choice. Lila's lips trembled, but her smile stayed. You are asking me to marry you again? For real this time, he said. No terms, no deadlines, no inheritance on the line. Just me asking the woman who saw me before I ever saw myself. She reached out, her hand finding his face with practiced ease. Her fingers brushed the faint stubble on his jaw, tracing the shape she had memorized by touch. I do not need to see you, she whispered. I already know your face. Ethan took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. Then let this be the only contract between us, love without condition. They stood there in silence for a long moment, the air filled with the quiet hum of the city beyond the church doors. Then, as if guided by the same thought, she leaned forward until her forehead rested against his chest. I used to think blindness was the end of my world, she said softly. But maybe it was the beginning of seeing the right one. He wrapped his arms around her, the words catching in his throat. You saved me from myself, Lila. No, she said, her voice steady. You saved yourself when you chose truth. Later that evening, they returned to the penthouse. The same piano where she had once traced the keys in silence now played a gentle melody under her hands. Ethan sat beside her, watching her move with confidence. "I did not know you could play," he said. "I could not," she admitted. "But I learned to find the notes by sound. It is the same way I found you." He smiled, his gaze soft. "Then I hope the music never stops." "It will not," she said, continuing to play. "Not as long as we remember what it sounded like to begin again." The camera of the world had long moved on, but somewhere high above New York, in a room once filled with cold silence, two people sat side by side, one who had learned to see without eyes, and one who had finally learned to see beyond wealth. As the final notes faded into the night, Ethan whispered, "The contract is over." Lila turned toward him, her smile glowing in the low light. "No, Ethan. It has only just begun." And for the first time, Ethan Parker knew that his story was no longer about the man who had everything to lose, but about the man who had finally found something worth keeping: love, truth, and the quiet strength of a woman who saw his heart when no one else could.